Beyond 6 seconds came to me based on a study that I had read about from among recruiters who only looked at your resume for about 6 seconds or so before they make that judgment as far as, do I want to advance you in the put you in the advance pile, or unfortunately cast your resume aside. So as I was thinking of this podcast, I really wanted to get beyond those kind of 6-second first impressions and help people tell their stories. So I talk to everyday people who have overcome incredibly big challenges.
Hey everybody, it's Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits and the 100 Club, where we help bona fide experts learn how to find 100 podcast interviews in record time. And today I'm really excited. I've got Carolyn Kiel, who is going to share with you what it takes to get on not only her show, but other expert shows. She collaborates with other podcast hosts, and she's going to reveal what she knows and what she believes to be true in the world of podcast interviews. And she's got the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast show. And that's an interesting title for a podcast show. How did you come up with that?
Sure. So Beyond 6 Seconds came to me based on a study that I had read about from among recruiters who only looked at your resume for about 6 seconds or so before they make that judgment as far as, do I want to advance you in the put you in the advance pile, or unfortunately cast your resume aside. So as I was thinking of this podcast, I really wanted to get beyond those kind of 6-second first impressions and help people tell their stories. So I talk to everyday people who have overcome incredibly big challenges, and I really dig into how they've done that in order to achieve really great goals, like starting a business, or achieving a big creative project, or even just changing their careers.
Nice. And it's interesting because that whole idea of 6 seconds, I think now with dating sites like Tinder, I've been in a 30-year relationship, so I've never used it, but I hear that, you swipe and you have like a nanosecond to make a decision on whether or not you're going to go any further. It's the same with what we see on the internet as far as products that we buy. And so the whole 6-second concept is really interesting. And I know that you work with corporations, and the people that you interview on your podcast show, entrepreneurs, creatives, authors, speakers. What is it that makes somebody stand out in that 6 seconds that they have to grab your attention? What really makes them stand out?
I think it's really just being in touch with your own strengths. That really leads to authenticity. So really understanding, I guess we call it the concept of personal brand. So what are your strengths? What's the unique value that you can offer to people, whoever you're speaking with, or the people that they work with as well? And then, what really is your passion? What drives you? So kind of that junction of the three really helps people stand out in those first 6 seconds. And then, all just being really genuine and being very engaging. I think also body language is big. A lot of times we judge people even before a word comes out of their mouth. So, in podcasting, most of my interviews are not, on video. So I really go by the audio and the sound, which for me is kind of nice because then I don't have the visual to distract me. So I really can hear what they're saying and the tone.
Right.
Reflection. So yeah, that's really important.
Well, I could turn off the camera now.
No, too late. I think our first impressions have been made. We're beyond those 6 seconds.
Right, absolutely. So I'm curious, what would you say has been one of the most unique type of guests that you've had that really caught your attention and you thought, okay, this is somebody that I need to interview? So do you like what you see? If you do, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave your comments down below. What did you most like about this video? By subscribing, you get updates of future videos that I put out. And by liking, what happens is it helps for this video and all other videos to go out over YouTube land. And so I really need you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave your comments below. Now, back to the video.
Well, I always think back to one of my first guests that I had on the show. I believe she's episode 7, and her name is Crystal Murrin. She was referred to me by one of my listeners in the early days of my podcast, and she had a story that she wanted to tell that she hadn't really told anyone before. It was a big part of her life, but she honestly wasn't even sure if anyone would be interested in hearing her story. But basically, in a nutshell, she was a corporate trainer. She did leadership training, and she worked for a company, and that that was her career, and she had a young daughter that she was supporting. And then one day she got into a very bad car accident and had a traumatic brain injury. And she wound up losing, we were talking about those strengths before, she lost for a while some of those critical strengths that she relied on, like her extroversion and her ability to speak fluently. And she was even, right after the injury, like she couldn't even go to the grocery store without, feeling like she was going to pass out, because your brain really, just reacts so strongly when it's injured and trying to heal. So she had to go through a process where she literally had to act sort of the opposite of self, like sitting in a room in the dark, like not looking at your phone or doing anything, literally just letting herself heal. And through that healing, she discovered new skills that she had. She had to become more analytical because she couldn't use the people side as much as she was recovering. And then she wound up starting her own business. So she's back in leadership consulting, but she now has her own consulting business and is able to support her family and just doing still work that she loves. So I just think that's amazing, the power of the human body and the mind to heal. But certainly it's not easy. So it's a great success story, but we really dig into what it was really like to go through those challenges.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I have some clients that I work with. One woman in particular, at about the age of 49 or 50, she had a very successful career, and she was very analytical in what she did. She had a stroke and completely turned her life upside down. Well, she wrote a book called Stroke Forward, and this is about 6 years since her stroke. And she said the first 3 years she couldn't even talk. And her business was all about communications. Right. And so, it's so interesting when we look at people and we dig deep into their story. That's what I love about podcasting, is that you can really dig deep into people's stories. And I'm curious, on the flip side, what's been kind of one of the worst approaches that you've had? You just said, oh, no, I can't have that person on my show, without names, but just kind of a general example.
Let's see. Well, I've been fortunate that I haven't had anyone who was a complete super memorable disaster or anything like that. All my guests have been great, but I guess the thing that really challenges me is that a lot of podcasters do get those generic pitches from usually podcast publicists, but they tend to be very generic. So it's very clear that the pitch was just written once and sent to hundreds of podcasters. Sometimes my name is wrong. Like, it's somebody else's name. It's somebody else's podcast name is still in there. And then I'm, so obviously I'm not super excited about that, but still I'm reading, and it's just clear that this was sent out on blast and that this person has probably never heard my show or listened. And from there, it's hard to tell what kind of value that guest can bring to my audience if they, approach it in that way.
Right. Well, speaking of which, the whole approach, what would you say would be the top 3 things you look for in somebody approaching you to be on your show? What do they need to absolutely do?
I mean, one thing that really gets me excited, that I always encourage guests who want to be on my show and probably work for other shows too, is that pitch me. Like, come do some research, even if, I'd love if you listen to all my episodes, but even if you just listen to 1 or 2, get an idea of what the show is like. Think about, and really why you would be a great guest for my show. What kind of topics do we cover? So I'm very focused, for example, on stories of overcoming challenges. So if you're there to sort of, kind of promote your business or just sort of, push a new book that you've written. And certainly you can do that, but the story has to be in there. So framing that pitch around saying, hey, Carolyn, I know you have guests who tell these amazing stories. I have an amazing story, maybe like 3 or 4 sentences about sort of the general overview of what that is, what is the challenge that you've overcome, and, maybe 1 or 2 things you've learned along the way. And then, just I would say that's the biggest one, is just pitch me. Like, I'm very fortunate. I get pitches every other day in, on social media, on email, on every source. So there's a lot of people pitching me, and very few people really pitch me well. So, that will really want you stand out. And that's 1. Let's see, 2, I would say, just really as a guest, I would say just prepare. I mean, we all prepare for at least to a certain extent, but and all of my guests have been prepared, even the ones that are telling their stories for the very first time. That doesn't mean that you have to have a script or anything like that, but maybe have a couple of talking points that you want to make sure that you cover, and that's always really helpful for me. And then 3 is ask questions. So I'm more than happy to talk with people, beforehand, or respond to questions before the interview if there's information you need from me or questions that you have about the podcast beforehand, and you really need to ask them, please absolutely ask me, because I definitely want to set expectations. We don't want to get onto the recording and then it's not what you expected at all. So that's been working really well for me, and I'm certainly open to answering any questions before the interview.
Excellent. Well, here's a question for you. How do people get in touch with you?
So you can find everything about me on my website. It is beyond6seconds.com. And there you can find all of my episodes, links to all of the episodes on podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Podcasts. Yeah, you can find a guest application form on my website, just a couple questions. Currently, I'm booked through the end of 2019, but in early 2020, I'll be recording new episodes. So once you fill that out, I will get in touch with you there, and you can find all my contact information on my website.
Excellent. Now, I'm curious, is there a particular type of guest? I know you like people that have great stories of overcoming and all that, but is there somebody in particular, like if you were to name a name that you would love to have on your show, who would that person be?
Gosh, one of my biggest dream guests is Brandon Stanton, and he is the man behind Humans of New York, or Honey, which is probably, it's funny, many people may not know his name, or they know him as Brandon, but he is the man who started it, and he has an incredible story. I've heard him tell it on Tim Ferriss's podcast, but I haven't really heard him share a lot about himself in public forums. It's usually all about Honey, and he's the one who's sharing the story. So obviously there's that connection here, that love of sharing stories, and I would just really love to have him on my show. I think it would be a perfect fit, that we are both really dedicated to helping, helping connect humans all around the world through stories.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put it out that Brandon comes to your show and contacts you and submits the form. And that would be so awesome, because one of the things I know to be true is if we put it out to the community, there might be somebody who can make that connection. So in closing, Carolyn, is there anything that you would like to add that would be beneficial to my community on really helping them to understand the power of preparation to get great podcast interviews?
Oh gosh. I mean, again, I would just emphasize, understand that, podcast hosts of all the top podcasts are getting probably dozens of pitches a day, which really adds up over the years. So there's a lot of competition. So there's a lot of competition for reach out, but at the same time, there's probably not as much competition for people who do the research and really are very thoughtful and deliberate about what they can bring and benefit to that podcast host. And again, it's not benefit to you as the guest or to you as the host, but really a benefit to the audience. So if you can really be thoughtful and communicate in a brief couple sentences or a brief pitch to that podcast host about how your content and your story is perfect for their audience, I really think that you will increase your success rate for getting on shows.
Excellent. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for your time. And my guest today has been Carolyn Kiel of Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. And I look forward to getting to know you better and sharing stories with you worldwide. Have a great day.
Fantastic. You too.